And now, aviation weather around Alaska.
Hi there, I'm National Weather Service Meteorologist Peter Chan with your Alaska Aviation Weather Outlook on this Tuesday, June 3rd, 2025. And to set things up, as of this Tuesday, we are watching an area of low pressure that's going to come up out of the North Pacific. We've already had one kind of pull up here along the YK deltas here on the southwest coast, and it's in the process of weakening. A frontal system, an occluded front, continues to work its way gradually north and eastward into the southern interior and into the western Gulf. But this next impulse is going to have a fair amount of moisture that's going to work its way up into Cook Inlet. Could bring a quarter to a half an inch of rain even in the Anchorage Bowl. But as that system does ride northeastward, it looks like it'll be crossing over Kodiak Island later this Tuesday night and a Wednesday morning, and then along the eastern Kenai coast later Wednesday before gradually weakening over Prince William Sound on Thursday. Meanwhile, as that moisture travels northward, it's going to encounter some colder air along the spine of the Brooks Range, and there could be some accumulating snow develop, especially Wednesday afternoon into Thursday along this area, including places like Anatuvik and Adigan Passes. Next push of rain with that system will not move into the Panhandle until Wednesday night and on Thursday. But we're looking for Wednesday morning to have IFR conditions, Utqiagvik on over toward and east of Dead Horse, including areas of the North Slope. We have IFR conditions, the Western Gulf, all along the northern Gulf Coast, Cape Suckling, including Prince William Sound, eastern Kenai to along the east side of Kodiak Island. And then an area of IFR conditions Wednesday morning, Nunavik Island, east of the Pribilofs, and then also through the Bering Strait to areas around St. Lawrence Island. Now on Wednesday afternoon, we find IFR conditions in through the Gulf, especially areas along Prince William Sound and eastward all the way past Yakutat. And then also we find in the southeast corner of the Bering along and north of the Alaska Peninsula, including the outer areas of Bristol Bay. And then in the far north, Utqiagvik on over toward Dead Horse, we anticipate some lower cloudiness there with perhaps some fog. But this is the area where you could see some lighter snow developing along the Brooks Range as this moisture rides northward, and a slight chance of isolated thunderstorm, middle Yukon Valley popping up with the daytime heating. Thursday morning, IFR along the North Slope and Arctic coast, and again, this area along the spine of the Brooks Range could see some accumulating snow, and then down here along areas of the Gulf Coast, some moisture causing lower ceilings and some rain pushing into the Panhandle, perhaps IFR conditions southern half of the Panhandle, and then on up here around Prince William Sound, east toward Cordova, and just outside of Yakutat, and then a broad area of IFR conditions over the southeastern Bering, including Bristol Bay, north side of the Alaska Peninsula, back toward St. Paul. And for Thursday afternoon, areas of IFR along the intercoastal mountains, northeastern Gulf Coast, inner channels here of the Panhandle, and then still up along the spine of the Brooks Range Thursday afternoon, and an area of IFR off the west coast, off the lower Yukon coast, back toward St. Matthew. And then within the interior, it's possible there could be an isolated to scattered thunderstorm embedded within areas of rain or rain showers, middle Yukon and coming up through the Tanana Valley. Pass conditions for Wednesday, Anatuvik Pass, generally MVFR, as will Adigan Pass, but there is that potential for some snow to develop along that area, so keep that in mind. Could result in more IFR conditions taking shape as the day wears on. Lake Clark and Merrill, generally MVFR conditions expected for Wednesday. Same thing, rainy pass, windy pass as we round along the Alaska Range. Now today, Tuesday, there are wind advisories for the Alaska Range. And those are going to continue this Tuesday afternoon into pre-dawn of Wednesday morning. South-southeast winds could gust as high as 50, 60 miles an hour along the ridge lines and through the passes. Isabel Pass Wednesday, MVFR coming VFR, and then further east, Mentasta Pass through the pass, generally VFR, but as you fly further south down into the Copper River Basin, MVFR conditions. Tanita Pass, generally MVFR expected Wednesday. Portage Pass, we'll see more in the way of IFR conditions, especially the eastern half of the pass out into Prince William Sound. The west entrance, MVFR, and then Chilkoot and White Wednesday, generally looking MVFR during the daytime there. Now, freezing levels at the surface are further north now up toward the Bering Strait, and on the south slopes here, the Brooks Range for Wednesday morning. Higher elevations around the Alaska Range, Chugach, Talkeetna Mountains, and Wrangell St. Elias Mountains. Notice, though, there's a pocket, a broad area, because of low pressure, there's a cooler area of freezing levels are lower in response to the cooler air aloft over the Bering, extending all the way down into the southern eastern Aleutians. And then ahead of this system in front, we find freezing levels rising across the Gulf 4,000 to 6,000 feet to 8,000 feet along the south end of the Panhandle and around Dixon Entrance. You have to go down out past Haida Gwaii and the British Columbia coast for freezing levels aloft of 10,000 feet or more. Now, with this moisture that's coming northward, we have the one low that's here today with the front that's weakening as it comes northeastern, and then we have the next impulse coming northeastward, crossing Kodiak Island on Wednesday into Wednesday evening. So that is going to bring another push of moisture, breezy conditions, and where there are these thicker clouds producing the rain above 8,000 feet lower Gulf, pushing out off the Panhandle, then above 6,000 feet here along the Gulf Coast. As we get into the areas of the interior, if there is any scattered convection, scattered showers or isolated thunderstorms, generally above 5,000 feet. And here is the upper level jet stream winds. Circulation, this trough, there's this broad trough along the west side of the state, and ahead of it, 120 knot wind max just south of the Gulf, but overall kind of a southwesterly flow coming into the Gulf. And then on the backside, we have northerly winds coming off the Asian continent into the western Aleutians. Drop this down to 9,000 feet or 700 millibars. We see a low circulation here over Lower Cook Inlet, and this is part of all the broader trough in the mid and upper levels of the atmosphere. Stronger wind fields coming into areas, the Copper River Basin, maybe up toward the central Alaska Range, northern parts of the Panhandle, especially in the southern portions of the Yukon Territory. But the strongest winds, 45 to 60 knots, remain just along and south of the Gulf, and then bringing things down to 3,000 feet. We're able to see that impulse of low pressure that'll be crossing and passing Kodiak Island by Wednesday afternoon and early evening. So winds along the Gulf Coast at 3,000 feet on the order of 30, 35 knots, potentially locally higher, maybe in the vicinity of Cape Suckling as high as 45 knots. And then on the backside of the system, we do have some winds coming off of the Lisburn Peninsula around Cape Lisburn and Point Hope, out of the east at 35 knots, and then dropping northward down across the area there from St. Lawrence Island to off of the lower Yukon coast. So as a result, most likely areas to experience some moderate turbulence on Wednesday will be surrounding Prince William Sound, far eastern Kenai, outside of the Hinchinbrook entrance on over toward Kayak Island, surface to 6,000 feet, some moderate turbulence. And then with that east-southeasterly flow off the west and there of the north slope, we could see some isolated moderate turbulence around Cape Lisburn and the Lisburn Peninsula on Wednesday, surface to 4,000 feet.